Hello and welcome to Release Date Rewind. My name is Mark J. Parker and I am a film lover, filmmaker, film celebrator. And normally this is an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts on your favorite apps. But thanks to Portland Media Center, you are about to watch the video component of this show where I celebrate movie anniversaries with my friends. Each month, I usually talk about 2 different movies that I love with different friends, and we talk about the making of the movies, trivia, any fun memories associated with them. So I hope you enjoy, because now it's time to rewind. All right, everybody, I am so excited for you to meet a new friend of mine, although we've known each other at least electronically for a couple years now. But I'm so excited to bring a Whitney stan onto this show. Please welcome Jason A. Coombs. Hello, Mr. Jason.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm
really
so
geeking
glad
out.
you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Jason is not only a Whitney stan, he's also a podcaster, Survival Jobs, right? Is that what it's called, Jason?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us about your podcast. There's going to be a million things we're to talk about because this guy, kind of like me, does a lot, and I want to talk about each of them. But first, tell us about your podcast. How long have you been podcasting?
Yeah, so me and my co-host Samantha Titselo, we have a podcast called Survival Jobs, where we interview artists that we admire, artists that friends who are at a level that we want to get to one day, about their journeys, about their artistic journeys and their journeys from working in survival jobs, right? Where they're trying to get to that next level. So it has like a little cute little theme, but it's really about just like connecting with artists.
Yeah,
it's on
I love
Broadway
it.
World.
I've listened to a few. Yeah, and you partnered with Broadway World, so you have do they distribute it, or do you guys distribute it and they promote it? How does it work?
So we do video through them. So they put the video of our podcast on their website, so people get exclusive video through Broadway World. But then you can also listen to it if you're old school and on all the podcast apps.
Oh, I know, right? I know. Isn't it funny how audio podcasts are now old school? When people, because now you have to differentiate. You need to explain when people are like, "Oh, your podcast." Well, wait, is it video or audio? I grew up where you would call that back in the day, a few years ago, a vidcast or a vodcast was video, and podcast was audio. But now podcast is sort of anything. But now, how many episodes have you guys recorded of Survival Jobs? You've been around for a couple years, right?
Yeah, we are in our 2nd season, and we are at episode 58.
Nice.
We're releasing episode 58 this week, so you're almost at 60.
Cool. Now, okay, so that's podcasting. He also, everybody, this is how Jason and I first met. He's also the founder of the Bridgeport Film Festival in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Now, Jason, do you live in Bridgeport or near it?
Yeah, I'm in Bridgeport right now. Yeah, I moved back during the pandemic.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I hear you. So, Bridgeport Film Festival started in 2021 or 2020?
2021. Yeah.
Yep. And you guys had selected my short film that I produced with Tom, who's been on this podcast before, Family History, which was so awesome. And you even gave us an award, which was so cool. Best Connecticut film, tied with another film. So, oh my gosh, film festival life. I've helped with film festivals. It's an undertaking, and I wasn't able to go, but it looked so great from pictures. Our makeup artist, Courtney, was able to go, and she looked great on the red carpet. You guys, tell us about it. That's a lot of work, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've always been someone like you who's just always working, and I've always had multiple projects. And then when the pandemic came, everything just kind of came to a halt, and I was like, wait, what do I do? Do I just sit here? And I've always had this idea of doing a film festival because I'm from Bridgeport. And for people who don't know, Bridgeport has a very negative reputation in the media. It's a very inner city. And, we could use more love and more culture, more art here. So I was like, what can I do? I'm not Oprah rich yet. I'm not a billionaire, nowhere close, but I can do something to bring more culture to my city. So I was like, okay, I love film. I always want to do a film festival. I had the time, so I partnered with a local nonprofit, and we just kind of took off. And, a big thing, I really wanted people from Bridgeport to be able to be inspired to tell their own stories, whether it is through film or through theater or through visual art, however they want to tell their stories through art, just to be able to do it, and change the narrative of Bridgeport, help inspire, and to, teach people okay, we all have a cell phone, right? Maybe I can make something one day, but how do I do it? To give them a little bit of seeds to get out there.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Now, you're a filmmaker and also an actor sometimes. Yeah. What other?
Yeah.
Right? You act as well.
I am. Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you really do it all. Now tell us like what,
Thank you.
because I don't even really know this that much. How many films have you made? Where can we see some of your work? Tell
Yeah,
us about
so
that side of things.
my website is jasonacoombs.com, and I've done a couple co-stars on. I did Mr. Robot and a couple
Oh,
other
cool.
TV
My friend
shows,
Mike
and like,
cast that show. That's cool.
really? Oh,
He
that's so
worked, yeah,
funny.
he works for Bowling Misha, and they had that show for a while. Yeah,
Yes,
that's cool. So he
he
might
probably
know you.
casted
That's so
me.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, and I've done a bunch of like independent stuff, and my
Yep.
next project I'm shooting in December is my first lead in a feature film, and it's a
Nice.
modern adaptation of Cyrano de Bergerac. It's like a
Oh,
modern queer
fun.
adaptation. So yeah, that's my
Oh, I love
next.
that.
I was, much like the rest of the country, or most of us in 2016, very pissed at the election results, and I
Oh
wrote
boy.
this. Yeah, it's very dark drama, which is very surprising because I'm more of a comedy person and like a horror person,
Hmm.
but this was a very LGBTQ short drama that Jake starred in. Hey, he's amazing.
Yes.
How do you know
How
Jake? That's so
funny.
funny.
So Jake and I back in, hi Jake, if you're listening, I
Yeah,
doubt you are.
right.
That'd be so funny, but maybe he
I'm a
will.
cynicism.
That's
Yeah,
so
right.
cool. And I haven't gotten a chance to see The Morning After, but the
Mm,
pictures that I've seen online that you've posted, they look beautiful. You guys,
thank
the lighting, the actors, oh my God, beauties. But so Jake and I were in a production back in 2014, a local production in North Jersey, just outside of the city,
Oh
with
wow.
Interact Theater Productions of Night of the Living Dead Live, which was so much fun. But that's great. Good for you for your success so
Thank
far and more to
you.
come for sure. Now,
Appreciate
Jason,
that.
let's talk about what we really need to talk about. Okay? Let's
Oh
rewind to
yes.
1992 when we were just
Yes.
little children, probably. Hopefully, I was. You
Yeah, I
probably
was
were too. I
6.
can't
I
imagine.
was
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
6.
Exactly. I was
Hmm.
5 when The Bodyguard came out. November
Yeah,
25th, Thanksgiving weekend. This week,
right?
30 years ago, The Bodyguard came out and took all of our money, took everyone's money. 400 something million worldwide, everybody. Major hit.
Crazy.
Okay? Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so what I'll do first, everybody, and Jason, just so you know, I'll set the scene. I'll talk a little bit about what was going on at the time. We can talk about, our main players, our cast and crew, what they were doing at the time. And then we're going to nerd out over this crazy movie that you
Yes.
love. And I have to admit, I'm ashamed to say, I am going to admit something, Jason.
Oh
I
no.
just saw this movie for the first time in full for this show. Is that not crazy? I had seen
Oh
clips.
my
I
gosh.
saw the Oscar ending finale, which is amazing. We'll get into it. But
The
I
drama.
realized I had never seen the full movie until like a couple nights ago. I know.
That's
What am I
crazy.
doing? I need to just
Wow.
stop doing this podcast. I
We're
know. I'm
like the
crazy.
exact opposite. I've seen it like 1,000 times, literally.
When did you? I'm going to ask you right now. When did you first see this? You probably didn't see it in theaters, or did you?
I didn't. So I have this memory because I think it came out. You're probably gonna get to this. It came out around the time as Home Alone 2, right?
Yep,
Did it?
exactly. Oh, and I'm glad because I have a question about that. But
Yeah.
okay,
So
continue.
I remember being a kid and my
Hmm.
family wanted to see this movie, and I was like, no, I want to see Home Alone 2. Like that's what like, in my head. And I remember going to
Oh,
see Home Alone
totally.
2. It wasn't until I guess a couple weeks after this movie came out, there was a bootleg, which was, people used to bring their
Oh yeah,
camcorders to the
my dad
movies.
was one of them. Oh
I
my
heard a
god.
podcast, one of your episodes
Yeah.
talking about I Know What You Did Last
Yes.
Summer, right?
Oh yes. Good
Yeah.
memory. Uh huh. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. We were that family. I was like, I really want to see this movie right away again. And so, yep, bringing. Yep.
I
Anyway,
love that.
don't tell the cops.
And I was just changed my life. Literally, I was just
Yeah.
glued to the TV as a 6-year-old watching this movie, and I remember hearing "I Always Love You," and I didn't know. It's funny because I didn't know if it was Whitney Houston or Vanessa Williams because I think they were both
Mm.
like just beautiful black women. So I didn't know who was
Yep.
who. But
Yep.
yeah, that was like my first memory, and it was like really terrible quality. I remember there's people in the seats in front of it, but I was just like glued to the TV. You
Oh, I
know?
love that story so much, Jason.
Yeah.
I know. Isn't it crazy how, as kids, you don't care about quality? You're able
No.
to still, like, right? As you get older,
Yeah.
you become snobby about that shit. But, like, as kids,
Exactly.
you can just lock into the story and you're in it, and it doesn't even need to be that good or anything, right?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, I love
It
that.
probably
That's
wasn't
so awesome.
appropriate for a 6-year-old to be watching either, but
Yeah, probably not. Although, actually, I don't think it's that bad for a 6-year-old.
it's
Now,
not too bad.
I come from a family where, like, I watched, like, Nightmare on Elm Street way too young. Like, we watched some crazy movies when I was a kid. But, I mean, the sex isn't explicit. There's
No.
really not a lot of crazy cursing. I feel like it's fine for a kid. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
whatever, right? There is some killing, which we'll get into because I do love when
Oh my
it goes into
gosh.
full thriller mode. But yeah,
Yes.
and also great shout out to Vanessa Williams because she
Oh my God,
needs to
love
do
her.
more. First of all, gorgeous voice, and I totally know what you mean. At this time, not that they were interchangeable, but at least to
No,
a kid's
no.
ears, you're kind of like, oh yeah, these two important black women singing big songs, like So I could
Yeah.
totally see getting them mixed up or like
And I
not sure.
do love Eraser, which I feel like is kind of like the Bodyguard light, which came out a couple of years after.
Yes. Oh, good thinking, Jason. You're right. It is kind of like Bodyguard Light. It's like in the same
Yeah.
family. Oh yeah, Eraser was. I remember seeing that. I don't know if I saw it in theaters, but if I didn't, it was like as soon as it came to like on-demand pay-per-view, we rented it. I remember the alligator.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Oh my
Eraser.
God, so
Yeah, I
good.
miss Vanessa. She was amazing. She still is, but
She is,
she needs
yeah.
to do some more. I think for sure.
She
Right?
does. I mean, if I ever get a budget, I'm gonna cast her in something. She's
Do it. Oh yes, do it. I second that. Go for it.
Have you seen
Yes.
Soul Food? I watched that scene. Have you
Oh
seen Soul
yeah,
Food?
soul food. Oh yeah,
The
back in the
kitchen scene.
day.
I watch that like every week when she's like, she chases yeah. I don't know if I can curse on
Yes.
this.
Oh
I
yeah.
won't, I won't say it. But,
She had a short wig in that
sure.
one, right?
Yep,
Yep.
she did. Yeah,
Yep. Totally. Oh yeah, soul food. That was a little later. I think that was in 97 or 96. I feel like
it
I've
was.
mentioned that, being popular during some of the other films I've talked about. But yes, so The Bodyguard, everybody, came out November 25th, 1992. This is what was going on. The biggest toy of the year. I thought this was funny to talk about. I don't normally talk about toys, but I just thought, what was like popular around this time? It was the holidays. What were trolls? The little troll dolls with the hair. They
Yeah,
were like the biggest thing since sliced bread this year for kids. So that'll jog your memory.
that
Speaking
does.
of Vanessa Williams, she and Angela Bassett starred in a TV miniseries. I guess you could call it limited series, but back in the day, they were just miniseries people, of The Jacksons, An American Dream, that had just
Oh
aired
my
on ABC, all about
God.
the Jackson family. It had just aired mid-November, just a couple weeks before this came out. Two-part miniseries starring those two and a bunch of others. I think Holly Robinson Pete played Diana Ross,
Yes.
if I remember correctly. But yeah, and that was watched by 38 million households. Big thing on TV at the time. So I thought that was kind of funny. Another, music themed film, right? On the music
Yeah.
side, we had Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You. That had come out earlier this month. That
Facts.
started on the chart, on the Billboard chart at 40, which seems kind of low. Whitney was already like a huge star by
Yeah.
then, but all right. It debuted at 40, 1 week later 12, and then 1 week after
Wow.
that
The one.
it was the weekend this movie came out, number 1, and it was number 1 for weeks and weeks and
Yeah.
weeks.
14 weeks.
Yes.
That's
Do you love
crazy.
that
That's
song?
like, I mean, I think so. I think I still do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like when you're a Whitney fan, it's like the song that everyone knows. So it's like
Right.
not always like the
Yeah,
one
you're
that
like,
you always think of.
yeah.
But of course, I think that acapella intro is so
Oh,
gorgeous. Like,
it's
still, it gives me
so
chills when I don't listen to it for a
right?
while.
And that's a
hmm
song where when it starts, because it is so unique, and apparently it was Kevin Costner's idea to
It
start the song a
was,
cappella. Did you see that?
yeah,
Yes. I
yeah.
know. I'm like, okay, Kevin. All right, music producer. But that's that kind of song where the way it starts, I'm transported to being a kid again. Hearing it on the radio
For sure.
and hearing how it just sounded different than everything else. It was like, because it was so quiet, it grabbed our attention, right?
Yeah, so quiet, so soulful, so like
Yeah.
get you chills. Oof.
Beautiful. Yes,
hmm
totally. And then on the movie side, other popular movies were Home Alone 2 had just come out 5 days prior. Obviously, another huge juggernaut. Now, I wanted to ask you, since I asked my previous guest, Sabrina, who also loves Home Alone, I thought it would be fun to ask you, Jason. I know we're talking about The Bodyguard, but what do you like better, Home Alone 1 or Home Alone 2? Do you have a
Home Alone
favorite, or do you like
2,
both
Home Alone
Home
2.
Alone
I mean, I love
2?
both, but Home Alone
Yeah.
2 is something about New York City and a pigeon
Yeah.
lady. Like we were just watching that
Oh,
2 nights ago
yeah.
in my house on Netflix. It was I
Perfect.
love that movie. Yeah, it's
I
so
know,
good.
right? It's so good. Both
And a
are
Talkboy
so,
Radio. Do
so
you remember the
good.
Talkboy Radio?
Oh, I had one.
I
Yeah.
had me too. I
You
used to have
had,
like
yeah.
my own little
Oh,
radio show. It was called
oh,
like
yeah.
Talkboy Radio, and I would just like talk to myself.
Oh, it was an amazing toy for sure. Just I had that everywhere, just recording, rewinding, and then you would run
Yeah,
out of tape, and you're like, all right, I have to re-record over this thing, right?
over this
Oh
tape.
yeah.
Yeah,
Look at us talk boys. I know. Yeah, that was great.
I know.
It's
I
hard for
love
me to
that.
choose. I really do love both. And they're I mean, 2 is basically the same thing, just in a different location, but
Yeah, same beats.
2 really ups the ante in such a great way. I mean, it's pretty special for sure. And Tim Curry, I mean, it's just amazing. I love that. So yeah, that was huge. That had just come out. Dracula, which I just previously talked about, that was a big deal. Aladdin, the animated Disney movie, was huge and ended up being the #1 film worldwide of 1992, but The Bodyguard was number 2.
Number 2,
so Home Alone 2 didn't even reach the levels of those 2 other films. So that's pretty crazy, right?
It's wild, yeah.
And right? It's so wild. And then another popular film that had just come out around this time was Malcolm X with Denzel from Spike Lee, also starring Angela Bassett. So some faces kind of doing a few different things at this time. So that was what was going on at the time, other big pop culture things. Jason, I'm going to throw it over to you real quick in your own words for anyone out there who has not seen this classic, huge movie. Tell us in your own words, what is The Bodyguard about?
Yeah. So I want to make sure I get this right because I know you always ask your guests this. I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, everyone does it differently. Some people are very succinct and some people take up half an hour. Whatever you want to do, go for it.
So Kevin Costner plays Frank Farmer, who is like a retired Secret Service agent who he was off from work, and that was the day that Reagan got shot. So it's like his first like kind of like big gig that he's been hired for, to be the personal bodyguard for this kind of like tumultuous singer turned actor, Rachel Marin, who's played by Whitney, and she's being stalked and harassed unbeknownst to her, right? Because like they didn't tell her, like her staff doesn't tell her, which is very weird.
Keep it secret. Yeah. I'm like, right? Bill Cobbs and her bitchy publicist. Oh my God, Cy is such a villain. Oh my God. I know he's not the villain, but oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it. I feel like he would be like a red herring if I watched it today for the first time. But the 2 end up falling in love, even though Frank has a very strict policy of not mixing business with pleasure, which kind of leads to like a conflict, and the first being, of course, there's someone trying to kill Rachel. I think that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. Well said. Oh my gosh, yes.
Frank Farmer to see Miss Marin.
What?
Alexander Graham Bell to see Miss Marin.
All right.
It's drama, but it's also, I mean, I actually love the thriller stuff. Like, I kind of wish it just was a total thriller, like through and through.
The whole way through, I mean?
Yeah. Like I think that's really when they're doing some interesting stuff. But
I know the whole cabin scene. He's like with the gun. I mean, it's so epic.
Oh, that cabin. And also, again, because this was the first time I saw the whole movie, I didn't even know there was a cabin. I'm like, what?
Oh, really? That's so funny.
I didn't even know that part. I had never seen any of that. I love that part. I was like, this could be its own spin-off movie, just like The Bodyguard cabin, right?
Yeah.
Really good stuff going on there. And honestly, kind of freaky. I mean, you've seen this so many times. You're like, nothing about this movie is scary, but I don't know. I was kind of a little freaked out at times. The letter with all the the creepy old school.
That guy was so
letters.
Creepy. Yeah, the stalker guy.
Totally, the blonde, shaggy hair. I'm like, that is someone in a wig. I'm like, oh, it's not.
No.
Yeah, and then the creepy phone call she gets by.
Yeah.
Now, okay. This is just something that's a little confusing, and I know we're kind of jumping around here, but Jason, maybe you can explain it to me, since you are a Bodyguard fan. So there are 2 people out to get Rachel: the letter making stalker who's obsessed with her, and then there is the real dangerous person. Spoiler alert, everybody! It is Frank's former colleague, Portman, right? Which I did not see that coming. And I even saw I had seen the ending, but I never really made the connection that like, oh yeah, that's that guy. Which we have to talk about that amazing ending. the just what goes on. We'll get to it.
The drama,
right? The buildup, the tension. But so tell me, Jason, so at the cabin, that is Portman
Yeah.
coming in to shoot, right? That's the stalker, the letter guy. He doesn't actually do any.
He's just an obsessed fan who
Yes.
like maybe may not be all there. And I feel like
Right.
this happened a lot in the 90s. Like people who like I guess he's albino, right? I think that's what he's like
That's a really interesting question because he does have extremely light features, like barely any
Yeah.
eyebrows. So, wow, maybe. I don't know. It's not super clear. A couple things in this movie aren't super clear to me, at
Yeah,
least
the
on
script is
my. Yeah. And here's the thing. It gets a lot of hate. It gets a lot of flack. I definitely don't think it's as bad as some people say. I think a lot of
no.
it works really well. I just
Yeah.
think actually, much like Dracula, some of the problems I have with it are the editing. I feel like sometimes we're going way too fast with some things to the point where
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, did the boat that the boy Fletcher was on
Oh, yeah.
really explode? Or like there are just some things that are so super fast that I'm like, wait, was that an accident? Like, did the engine was it old and it exploded? Or, oh, there was a bomb in there. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. We're kind of like zipping through the dialogue. I need to slow it down a touch. You know what I mean?
No, for
So
sure.
some of the pacing is a little too speedy and then maybe a little too slow sometimes,
Yeah, it's very uneven. It's very
Yeah,
uneven.
exactly. But I just wasn't sure. I wanted some just confirmation on, that was Portman doing that. What about earlier in the film, which they touch upon very quickly, and it again is pretty freaky. Like this is now entering like real thrillers, territory, when they say that someone broke into Rachel's mansion and masturbated on her
the
bed.
So I think that was the stalker. I think that's
So that
the
was a stalker. Okay.
Yeah,
So we have
because
one
remember-
for stalker, one for
Yeah.
one for Portman. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Keeping the tally. Yeah.
Someone was in my house? Wait a minute, someone was in my house?
A few brief moments are in Rachel's head. Like I love when she's at the Oscars and they slowly pull out the the thing. But and at first I thought it really was. Oh my god! I was like, oh my god! Someone working for the Oscars is the stalker. Oh my god! But it's just her imagination because she's so freaked out.
She's so freaked
I
out.
wasn't sure. Every now and then it's just like, is she just thinking this? Which I love that. I think that's a really cool tactic where it's like, is it in her head? Is it in Frank's head? Is it real? But the beginning, it starts with the explosion, but it's a little like, is that just to be like cool? Or, oh, there really was an explosion. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
not
it is
super
very
duper
confusing. I think I was always. I mean, I was 6, so I feel like
Yeah.
I didn't really get the movie until I was like in high school.
Right. Oh yeah,
Some-
with some age.
Some things didn't really connect to me.
Yeah,
was
maybe when I get
looking-
older, I'll totally understand it fully as well.
I'm just gonna watch it like 500 times like I did. And then
Yes.
it'll all make sense.
Right? Absolutely. Yeah. But so before we nerd out even more about these scenes, and I want to hear why you love this movie, other lines, other scenes that you love, I'll quickly talk about, and feel free to chime in as well, Jason. I'll quickly talk about, the main players and kind of how this movie got started, which I think is pretty interesting. So the writer-producer, Lawrence Kasdan, who also had directed films and was already Oscar nominated by the time this movie came out. He wrote big movies like The Big Chill and different things. He wrote this film originally in 1975, which is so interesting. And maybe that kind of explains a little bit of a cheese factor. What do you think? Like maybe some moments were sort of written back then and kind of stayed back then and weren't totally fleshed out for an early 90s audience, maybe?
For sure, I can agree with that.
Right?
And also, it was supposed to be. I think they had reworked it a little bit for Diana Ross. Is that like?
Yeah.
Is that true? Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I read, so it was going to be Diana Ross, and it was going to originally, I guess, be Steve McQueen. Again,
Yeah.
70s, early 80s people, right? But then by like 1981 or something, I read, and maybe you saw this too, Steve McQueen was out and Ryan O'Neal was in, and I didn't even realize that Diana Ross and Ryan O'Neal were a real life
We're
couple.
married, right?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, totally didn't even realize that. I'm like, sorry, I'm catching up with like the 80s, everybody. But then I guess she backed out. Do we know why she backed out? She,
I couldn't
pulled
find
out of the
anything
movie.
on that. Yeah,
Right?
I couldn't find anything on that.
Yeah,
she
I
stopped
couldn't either.
acting for a while. Like after The Wiz, right?
I know, and I love The Wiz, and I love her in The Wiz so much. I know,
She's probably too old for that, but
yeah, probably too old. And another movie that had some great moments, and maybe like it's a little bit messy here and there, but I just, oh my gosh, what a unique movie for sure. But yeah, so he had written it with them in mind, and then it was in development hell for a while. The director, a British director named Mick Jackson, he had previously worked on L.A. Story with Steve Martin and Sarah Jessica Parker, and I thought this title was interesting. I hadn't heard of this one. Chattahoochee with Gary Oldman Frances McDormand,
wow.
and Dennis Hopper. So some big stars. So
Wow, yeah.
I haven't seen either of those movies. I know I need to see
I
LA
haven't seen
Story.
either. No,
I
haven't
know.
seen
I know
either
that.
one.
Yeah, Chattahoochee is a little less popular, I think. But yeah, so
watch
he
the
had worked with
trailer.
some big stars, right? And then in comes actor and producer Kevin Costner. He was such a thing back in these days. He had just been in JFK, again with Gary Oldman, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves as Robin Hood,
Yes,
and
Robin Hood. Mm-hmm.
right, and in Dancing with Wolves, which he not only starred in, but he was the director, producer. He won Best Picture at the Oscars
Picture
that
for
year.
that. Yeah, he was
He
hot.
won a Golden Globe for directing. Now, tell me, did you ever see Dances with Wolves? Because I have not.
So I think it's one of those movies where I would see clips on like
Yeah.
HBO as a kid. So I've never
Exactly.
seen the whole thing. And I was a Kevin Costner fan at 6 years old
Oh,
because
were
of this
you?
movie.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
because I like love this movie. And I remember like watching
Totally.
Robin Hood, like
Yeah.
because I think it came up right before this or maybe a year
Yep.
before this. I had like
They
the
were, like,
action,
back
he
to
had like an
back.
action figure. So
Yeah,
I would,
yeah.
and there was
Yeah,
another
it's-
one that he did after, which was like a little boy. You know what I'm talking about? He's like in like
Yes.
Texas.
Oh my God, Jason! I thought
What's
I was
it
the only one that
called?
knew that movie. I believe it's called A Perfect World.
It is
Right?
called A Perfect World. Yep.
Directed by Clint Eastwood, and it's so funny. I think you and I were just HBO kids, and I know a lot of people don't know it. It's not really like one that people
a
refer
deep
to a
cut.
lot. It's a deep cut, but it's a good cut. I think,
Yeah,
at least as a
yeah.
kid. I haven't seen it in years, but yes,
Same.
A Perfect World, yes, for sure. And then he did Waterworld, different world, which was fun. I mean, I had fun seeing that. I guess I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah. It's really
But
long.
so he came into this because he was working on the movie Silverado in the mid '80s, came out in 1985, which was written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan. So I guess they're working together. Lawrence talks about, oh well, I wrote The Bodyguard 10 years prior. Couldn't get made. It apparently, you probably saw this too, it apparently had like 67 rejections. Like no one really wanted to make the movie, which is
Yeah.
crazy because it just feels, I mean, I guess it's hard. We know it's such a success,
Hard
but it just
sell,
feels like
yeah.
such an easy thing to do. But I guess people just, we're not interested, right? So he gets
Yeah.
talking to Lawrence Kasdan. He's like, oh my God, we have to make The Bodyguard. So once Kevin got bigger, and had more success with Dances with Wolves and was winning awards, that's when he was able to get attached to the movie and, make the movie with Lawrence Kasdan and bring on Mick Jackson and our queen of the movie, Queen of the
Yes.
Night.
Queen of the Night.
Which I love. I love that song. We're going to talk about the different songs too. But
Oh, we have to,
in
yeah.
comes Whitney Houston, her first film role, her first major acting role. She had already
Yes.
won Grammys by now. Of course, she had I Want to Dance with Somebody. She had all these major songs already. She was a star, right? But this was the
Yeah.
first time she was a movie star. What do you make of her performance? What do you think? Because again, it gets some mixed reviews.
I think I'm pretty biased just because I've seen it and I love it so much. But I think
Yeah.
one thing about her, because she may not be like an amazing actress, but she has that star quality, right? She has something that's so charming and so like
Oh yeah.
she lights up the screen, she lights up the screen and she does well enough. I don't think she's like embarrassing in any of her, there's some singers who you're just like, ooh, you're like cringing the whole time.
Yes.
But she pulls it off, she pulls off this
Oh,
very
yeah.
entitled, self-centered
Yeah.
diva, quote unquote, and she
Yeah.
pulls off really well. And I think she has some
She's
really
definitely
great scenes.
demanding. She's sassy and it's so fun, but
Sassy,
like,
yeah.
make some not great decisions just because she's, a badass, but she does it so well. And you're so right. From the second we see her, when they're like, they're like shooting a music video in her house, right?
your house,
Which is so cool. I love that so much. Once Bill Cobbs, her manager, right, says like, the
Yeah.
bodyguard is here, your new bodyguard. I don't want a bodyguard. And she turns around and it's like, yep, you got me. Like I am glued to her on
Glued.
screen.
Hi,
You don't look like a bodyguard.
this is my disguise.
Thanks so much for watching. Next week will be part 2 of this discussion. And in the meantime, please follow Release Date Rewind on Instagram. Bye.